Welcome to MetalCast, the podcast where we're turning up the heat on all things metal, roofing. On this show, we'll explore the world of metal roofing from its durability to design, expert insights, and more. Join us as we bang out the details on the toughest roofs in the game. Get ready to unleash the power of metal roofing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of MetalCast from Metal Coffee Shop. My name is Karen Edwards, and today's episode I'm really excited for because I don't know a lot about this topic, and it's going to be all about cold-formed steel and some of the trends we're seeing in residential and light commercial construction. And today's episode, I'm being joined by Corey Lincoln from Metal Sales. Corey, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, this is going to be great. But before we dive into the topic, I would just like for you to introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you do there with Metal Sales.
Yeah, my name's Corey Lincoln. I've been in the metal roofing wall panel industry. Gosh, now I'm probably going on about 12 to 13 years. Started as an inside sales role in 2010, 2011 at a metal roofing and wall panel manufacturer. And I kind of grew, just expanded from there. You know, eventually before I came to Metal Sales, I was doing a lot of standing seam installation in project management for some pretty large projects. And Metal Sales hit me up and offered me to take over the Wyoming territory for our light gauge side. And I grew my light gauge territory by 200% essentially because of cold form metal buildings. And then slowly kind of transitioned into this business development role for our Impact Steel Building Division.
Wow. So yeah, you've got a taste of it all, right? From all different sides.
Absolutely. I love standing seam. It'll always be like my biggest passion in the metal industry, but cold form buildings has been a new kind of area for me to grow into, and it's been I've learned a lot, met a lot of great people in the industry, and it's been a blast. So I'll continue on this trajectory for quite some time, I think.
Yeah. So for my own knowledge and for those listening who may not know, can you explain what cold formed steel is and how it's different from other types of steel?
Yeah, good question. So my cold formed steel comes in just like you would a metal roof and wall panel coil, right? It comes in, it's just a flat sheet of metal at a stretched out size, galvanized, and we essentially put it through a much heavier duty roll former, right? So it comes in heavier gauges, obviously, than our metal roof and wall panels. You know, we're standard like 26, 29, 24 gauge kind of stuff. But I'm doing, anything from like 16 gauge to 10 gauge in my structural components. And basically we pull it off a coil. We have a machine that punches the holes for our connections that we bolt. And then the machine also cuts the coil to length. And then it goes through a series of some very heavy duty roll formers and creates, our C's, our Z's. We do sloped eave purlins on the machine as well. So it's pretty much the same process as manufacturing metal roof and wall panels. We're just doing structural components for steel buildings.
So when you say structural components, and you said your Z's and I'm like, what's a Z? So dumb it down for me.
So usually we take our C's, right, and that makes our columns and our rafters. And then our Z's are our purlins and girts, and our purlins are what we use to attach our metal roof and our roof panels on, and then our girts are what we use to attach our wall panels to. So that machine makes every single one of those components that essentially create the structure of the building so that we can then attach our metal roof and wall panels to. We do have brackets as well, those brackets that connect to the metal roof and wall panels. It's usually made out of steel galvanized material, usually a heavier gauge, depending on the size of the building. And then those bolted connections bolt all those C's and Z's together, and then the purlins and the girts, which are Z's, then all get bolted to the columns and rafters.
Wow. Okay. So is this how, one of the trends that we're seeing, and I met Stacy Lynn from the barndominium company last year, who was a designer, and she talked a little bit about the trend of barndominiums. Is this how most of them are being built?
I think the majority, quite honestly, of barndominiums are still stick frame, right? They're going to be still wood frame buildings. The cold form metal building industry is still pretty new, right? Like we're only like 20 or so years into the construction industry, which still in the grand scheme of things is pretty new. But with developments in the software and developments in the engineering and the developments in the roll forming equipment, we're constantly able to roll form heavier gauge steel, bigger C's, bigger Z's, that sort of thing. So now we're breaking in this industry where we can make these pretty large barndominiums, right? So I think relatively they're a new stick frame, but also a pretty big trend is like an industrial look, right? So people can really finish our buildings out from the interior and really have like a modern industrial interior. One of my favorite builds is actually in Wyoming, where I'm from, and it's a marina that they turned. It's got a bar, restaurant, but it's really done from a modern industrial standpoint, showcasing a lot of our framing components in the interior of the buildings still, and it looks fantastic.
Talk to me a little bit about some of the other benefits besides aesthetics that are a reason that a contractor might consider using the cold formed steel in the construction of a building.
Yeah, so for me, from my standpoint, from my manufacturing standpoint, I can essentially, from the time you hit an order button, confirm the shipping, I'm at delivery to the job site in 3 to 4 weeks, and that's all my structural components and all my metal roof and wall panels and trim, right? So that's a pretty quick manufacturing time frame. And from the contractor standpoint, right, like those guys get a set of construction documents and engineering documents, and every piece that I make is printed with a part code on it. And they can look at the construction documents. It tells them exactly where that piece goes and exactly what piece it's connecting to. And essentially, my guys that are building my cold form steel buildings, especially barndominiums, they can generally build 2 of these for every 1 wood frame barndominium that they used to build.
Wow.
There's still a little fabrication. We have knee braces and apex braces that need notched. Some of our overhangs need a little bit of fabrication, but for the most part, even as far as my jambs for my openings and my wall panels, I'm cutting them all to length. So there's quite a bit less fabrication in the erection of my buildings than there is a typical stick frame barndominium.
It's ready to assemble, literally.
Just about, yeah. It's pretty close.
Well, that's huge. Being able to do 2 of these in the time frame that normally would have just been 1, that's going to allow somebody to easily double their business.
Absolutely, right? So one of my best contractors, he actually built the marina I talked about earlier. When I brought him in, I've known him for a really long time. I met him when I first came into the metal roof and wall panel industry, and he took these, started running with them, and he's doubling what he's doing, and his crews are doing every year, what they used to do in wood frame.
Now, some of the benefits that the building owner gets out of being all steel, there's got to be, I don't know, are there energy efficiencies? Obviously, fire resistance is going to be a big one, right?
Absolutely, right? So we essentially don't we don't really have a fire exposure problem with our steel buildings, right? We have metal roof and wall panels, we have metal structural components, right? And there's areas in the country that are really fire prone that you essentially can't get insured to build a new home, even if you previously had a home that burnt down, unless you make it out of steel, right? They're much more willing to insure a steel building. So that helps us out a lot. Another thing is, we have you can change in the software program the size of Z's that you want to put on there. So you can do pretty heavy R value. We're doing like R50 roofs and stuff here in Colorado quite commonly. And these buildings really benefit from spray foam. So if you're going to inhabit one of my structures, a standing seam roof and some spray foam, I mean, it's quite an incredible building, very energy efficient, and we design them all, and they're all engineered to design whatever county code requirements are and snow loads. So I'm building these buildings with 150-pound snow loads where I live in Wyoming quite frequently. So a lot of benefits to the homeowner. Plus, they can order a building from one of my dealers and erectors, and they can have a building sitting in pieces at their job site in 4 weeks.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
and then you get a good contractor, depending on the size of the building, they have a structure up in a week, week and a half. It's very quick, yes. So from a homeowner standpoint, right, you get to go home and you get to see this cool structure. Every day you're coming home, there's a lot of progress made. Unfortunately, in stick frame, a lot of times it takes, stick frame builds up momentum, right? So you see very small changes and then it just grows and grows and grows. But ours, man, it's fast. Every day you're seeing something new.
Yeah, stick frame, easily 6 months, and lots of depends on this, depends on that. But yeah, with the cold form steel, it's pretty fast. That's really cool. I would like to know about the learning curve. If there's a contractor who's listening and maybe they've never done it before, what should they know? Where should they go? How should they get started?
Yeah, that's easily probably one of the best questions, right? Because I have contractors ask me the same thing, right? Like I have a lot of tapered frame red iron guys that want to add another tool to their toolbox, essentially, right, to add value to their business. Same with the stick frame guys. And from an erection standpoint, that's always my first question. Like, what is this like to erect? I'm doing red iron or I'm doing stick frame. What's the difference? I tell guys, this is something new. Everything new is going to have like a learning curve, right? So give me 2 or 3, right? Give me 2 or 3 buildings on the ground. Don't try to bring in a crew of 10 or 20 guys to help you build the first one. Minimize your crew so that you can take your time. Understand the construction documents and the engineering documents. Call me if you need help. I've erected these myself, and so has my team. So, I can work them through those first 2 or 3, get over the humps, and then those guys are just cruising. Usually after those first 2 or 3, I don't hear from them anymore. You know what I mean? They're ordering buildings, they're erecting them, they're sending me pictures of them, and that's what I love. So for those guys, it's just getting on the ground and building a few.
Yeah. With a little bit of help. And then it's kind of like learning to ride a bike, right? You get a little bit of help with those training wheels and then off you go.
Yeah, right. It's like, whether you did tapered frame, red iron, stick frame, whatever it is, there was always a learning curve when you got going. It's going to be the same for my cold form buildings. It's just that there's a lot less fabrication in my buildings. We're cutting a lot of the components to the size you need, right? So guys can really erect these with minimal crews and even minimal equipment at times because my framing components are pretty lightweight and there's very few of them. So
yeah, that's important, especially with the labor challenges that everybody's facing. If you can do it with fewer people, that's a plus for everybody. So I know that you mentioned the software. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about what this software is, what it does, and how someone can access it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the software essentially is we give you access to download a program onto your computer, right? And essentially it's a CAD-based program that's and the front end much easier to use than CAD. But you're essentially designing buildings in the software, and especially for contractors and erectors who are wanting to meet with a homeowner, get the design it in the software themselves and order it, right? They can manipulate a lot of things in our software. So you can change some of the framing components. You can change whether you wanted your grits or purlins bolted on or screwed on, right? So there's a lot of parameters in the software, but you essentially take your basic length, width, heights, input them into the software. You can add lean-tos, mezzanines, partition walls. A lot of our roof and wall panel options are also included in there. So you can take all those, design it from a 3D standpoint, move it around on the screen, add all your engineering requirements, and then basically from there, you just hit an engineering button and you get engineered documents. When you get those back and you're satisfied, you hit the order button. It comes to my team in Denver or Woodland, California, or I got 5 purlin mills around the country, and 4 weeks later it's at your job site. So the software on the front end is pretty easy to use. But you can really dig into it, right? Like you can add your own custom trim profiles if you want. You can change punch patterns in the parts if you want. You can change the size of the Z's and the purlins if you're trying to reach certain R value requirements. So every parameter in that software is designed to make the erection of the building easier on the job site. And the contractors that are selling them and erecting them can really take that software, adds a lot of value to their business. They can change all the parameters to make erection easier for them, and then they're off and running.
Right. So it's going to give them material costs, right? So, okay, this is everything, and this is what it's going to cost you. So that's going to help them be more accurate in their estimating, I would imagine.
Absolutely. So in the software, right, it pumps out a price. You hit a calculate button, it runs it through an engineering process. For the most part, those buildings, when they get calculated in that process, and they don't have any errors, they're almost 85% engineered already. They're close. It goes through a pretty intense algorithm, and it cranks out a price. You can also see a full parts list. You can see every component that I'm including with that building, and you can break it down, and you can change some of those too. You can add some trims, take away trims. It'll even live update the price for you in the software if you're doing that. And then we even have a part where contractors, we actually make like a pre-done contract that they can print out and give to their customers. And it has like 3D pictures of the building, the price, all the engineering parameters, all the opening parameters, so that the customer is getting like a pre-filled out contract that then they can go into negotiations with the contractor with. So it doesn't do just design the building, but it's really a program designed to sell, design, and order.
Wow. Okay. So it has to be customizable then for that particular contractor, because different contractors are going to have different labor costs. They're going to have different overhead costs. Is it factoring all of those things into that estimate?
So really at the front end of the software, right, it's only factoring in the structural components and the roof and wall panel components, and then all the screws and fasteners and stuff and trim. But they can go into the software, add some preferences into the settings, right, where they can add electrical work costs, foundation costs, HVAC costs, erection costs. So they can add those in there and add their costs into there, and they can crank out a turnkey package, right? I have a lot of contractors, some self-performers that are selling turnkey packages at one set price, right? $12,000, you get this building, the slab, all the electrical, the insulation off and running. So I have a lot of guys that do that, and you can input all those parameters into the software.
Excellent. I figured there has to be room to wiggle and play. Yeah. And then how many are you seeing contractors maybe sitting with a homeowner and making those changes in the program? Like, oh, you want to see this different? I can change this here, and this is how it's going to look.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can sit down with the homeowner, right? And we add securities into the software. So when you're in there inputting stuff and designing a building in front of a customer, right, that customer isn't seeing the price that you're purchasing the building from, right? We have securities in there like that. So that stuff is hidden. But you can absolutely sit down. It's actually kind of fun for the customer because you can actually grab the building on the screen, with your mouse or with your finger if you have a touch screen. You can move it around. You can take all the roofing and wall panels off the building and see all the structural components. And it's accurate. Like, right, if you add a window into the building in the software and you recalculate it, it automatically shows the correct framing for that opening going in there. It shows the correct X bracing. I mean, it shows all that live. So it really gives the homeowner of an idea of like, okay, what is the framing going to look like? So you just remove the roof and wall panels and they're like, oh, okay. So they can understand and see what the framing is going to look like of their new barndominium, their shop. We do a lot of fun buildings in the software.
I bet. Yeah. It's like an easy button for the contractor, right? You're making it simple.
It adds a lot. The guys that really run with it adds a ton of value to their business. They really enjoy them. Our buildings, when they're erected, they are obviously a very well designed, very well engineered building. They look incredible. In fact, a lot of the leads that I get coming in from my new contractors are from people seeing them erect one, because a lot of people are used to stick frame, taper frame, brand iron, but they see these really beautiful galvanized columns and rafters and they're like, what kind of building is that? And that actually drives quite a few sales for my guys.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. So the Impact software, is this, because you're wearing a shirt that says Impact Steel Buildings. So this is a brand of metal sales?
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Yep.
And so is the Impact software available on Metal Sales website?
So it's not. They can send in a request to get the software. I can say the best way to do is to reach out to me, reach out to my team, or if you reach out to any of the metal sales manufacturing corporations and tell them that they're looking to get into the Impact software and to get into Impact Steel Buildings, they'll more than likely put you in touch with me. And then essentially all I do is I talk to the guys. I like to kind of hear their story, what they're doing, where they're looking to take their business. look at their websites, that sort of thing. And then I send them a link essentially that they fill out. Me or my technical manager, Sean, will approve those accounts. Once I hit the approve button on them, they just go back to the website and then they can actually download the software. And then they do have to set up an account with Metal Sales, but get those two things out of the way and you can literally hit the order button and get a building at a job site.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Are you seeing the trends across the country? Are you seeing more in out west? Is it regionally based, or are you seeing growth just overall in general?
Growth overall in general, right? Like cold form steel buildings is one of the fastest growing sections of the construction industry right now. I think we had the cold form metal industry grew like something around 67% last year. So yeah, it's pretty incredible, right? And they're going to even see even more growth this year, right? And even on my end, I'm seeing quite a bit of growth. The West is my world. So I live in Wyoming. I spend a lot of time in Wyoming, Colorado right now. Wyoming, Colorado, the Dakotas, Nevada, California, all those states. I mean, it's big. It's exploding there, right? I mean, I get calls every day. And the east side isn't necessarily my world, but we're always seeing growth over there too. So it's gonna get bigger. I always tell people, if you're not on the cold form train now, you're gonna wish you were at some point, because it's just gonna continue to get momentum. Right? The software's always getting updated. The engineering is always growing, and these buildings are only gonna get easier to assemble.
Right. Yeah. Wow. So if you're listening to this and you are not doing the cold form steel buildings, you need to be, right? Be an early adopter.
I always joke, if I was in my 20s, I'd be out there erecting cold form steel buildings. But now I'm at a point in my life where I'm a little older, and what I really enjoy is I love meeting young guys who are trying to carve their own niche in the construction industry. I show them cold form the cold form buildings, and I have quite a few handful of guys that are young in their 20s that have now built very good lives for themselves and their families off of adopting cold form steel buildings, and then that's all that they're erecting, and that's what I get a lot of joy from. I really like to see those guys grow their business and take cold form on and really carve their own niche in the industry. It's fun.
Well, there's so many positives for everyone involved. The contractor, for the building owner, the homeowner, all those benefits we mentioned earlier. So I want my next home to be a cold form steel building. I'm excited.
Well, let's do it. Let's do it, right? And all my metal sales panels. We have a plethora of profiles. A lot of them are in the software. I'm doing standing seam roofs a lot too, which is still kind of a love of mine, right? So, still doing a lot of standing seam roofs on these, and we got a lot of cool things coming down the pipe right now. Some board and batten panels and some things like that. So, we're continually evolving, making it better and making it more exciting for everybody.
Makes sense. So, wow, I want to thank you so much, Corey, for being here and providing this wonderful information about these cold form steel buildings. It's been great.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And thank you, ladies, for inviting me. It's been great.
Yeah. And if you want more information, Metal Sales has a directory on metalcoffeeshop.com. So you can go there, check that out, get the contact information, and start your journey with cold formed steel metal buildings. And thank you, everybody out there, for listening. Be sure to follow us on social media, because we don't want you to miss a thing. And subscribe to our podcasts on your favorite podcast platform, because we want to see you on a future episode. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Ready to raise the metal roof? Subscribe to MetalCast now and stay tuned for all things metal roofing. Go to metalcoffeeshop.com to learn more. Rock on, and we'll catch you on the next episode.